Good morning and welcome to the ARC's Culture and Community Design Information Session. This session is specifically for individual applicants to the 2023 program. I'm very glad to be here with you today. My name is Josh Phillipson, the Principal Program Specialist for Arts, Culture, and Creative Placemaking. With me, I have a couple other staff members who will be speaking. So I'd like to introduce and move my slide forward. Introduce Marion Liu, the Director of Community Engagement and the Arts, and Molly Bogle, Manager for Community Development Assistance Program. All right, so let's get started here. We are going to be talking today about the Culture and Community Design Program. We're very glad to have three of our alumni from from the 2022 program earlier this year, who will be speaking with. We are going to talk about the program in 2023, what is new, what our goals and expectations are for the program. We're going to talk about how this program connects to some of our other ARC funding programs. And we're going to talk about how to apply, what the application timeline is, and we'll also go into questions and what we're expecting in the application itself from individuals. We'll definitely have time at the end for your questions, as well as during this session, we'll stop a couple times and let you ask questions of our guests. And our chat is always open if you have questions. So please, as they come up, ask them, and we may answer them right then, or we may wait, and if we know we're going to cover it in a little bit, and answer them when we get to that part in the program. So by the end of today's session, you will understand the background, purpose, and the desired outcomes for this program. We think you will have learned a little bit about the program experience from last year's participants, what you might expect from this year based on their perspective. You'll know about the program structure and content for this coming year, and you'll understand how to apply, what the timeline is, what that process is. We are always want to welcome you to talk to us, ask questions about the program, so you'll know how to contact us after this session is over, and you'll have a pretty good idea what the next things you need to do for the program are. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Marion. Marion.
Thanks, Josh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marion Liu, and I direct the Arts and Culture program here at ARC. So I actually started off my career as an attorney, but my background with respect to this work is in community advocacy, cultural preservation, and creative placemaking or placekeeping. And the origin of culture and community design at ARC really started around 2 years ago when the agency's arts and culture work came into our community development department. And we thought about ways in which we could begin working more closely and more directly with artists, creatives, and culture bearers to really make our planning and engagement work more inclusive, more equitable, and to really be working closely with people in communities that don't usually participate or perhaps have never heard about or experienced our work. So in 2021, we began using our Arts Leaders of Metro Atlanta program, which some of you may be familiar with. I think I see some other alumni in the list of participants, which Josh led for several years. And we thought about using ALMA as an incubator for this new kind of work. And so we became much more intentional about including working artists, about ensuring that the program was more racially and ethnically diverse, to reflect really the region's growing diversity. And we became much more focused about who we wanted to bring together. So artists and culture bearers, planners, designers, civic designers, urban designers, and people working in local government. To really think about creative and accessible ways to reimagine and address, the region's greatest challenges, which is within our purview as the region's planning agency. And so in 2022, we added community-based organizations to this combination, and we were looking for community-based organizations that are very much rooted in the communities that they serve, that have been underrepresented in local and regional planning, and whose missions and programming are really centered on arts and culture. So we are very excited to continue bringing the talents of the people participating in our program to assist. And in 2022, they worked with 3 community-based organizations on ideas that they were interested in pursuing. So it's been over these past 2 years that we've been really germinating this approach to working in planning and planning for the future growth and development of the region, as well as supporting our communities who, as you all know what they most need. And so that's where we are today. And next slide. So I hope you're paying very careful attention because, you know, the questions in our application are really geared around, you know, us being clear about the program purpose and the desired outcomes for this program, and as well as communicating that to you all so that you understand how your experience, your background, and your aspirations really align with what we're hoping for from this way of working. So the purpose of this approach and this program is really advancing arts and culture as an essential part of inclusive and equitable planning in communities across Metro Atlanta. Next slide. And like I said, I hope you're paying close attention. Josh will also go over this further along in this presentation about our application and the questions that we hope you'll answer. And so the desired outcomes for our program are that artists, culture bearers, planners and designers, and local government folks can learn to collaborate effectively on planning and community engagement projects and challenges and opportunities, and that community-based organizations are prepared to participate in and lead local and regional planning processes with ARC as a strong collaborator and as a conduit to funding and implementation. And finally, really establishing these lessons that we learned throughout this program for, you know, sharing these lessons that we've learned throughout the region as best practices for future implementation. Next slide. So why should you apply? You know, as artists and culture bearers, you know, we're really hoping that you can help us approach the work that we do in a much more creative, much more engaging ways. And also, so we're hoping for that from you all. But I do know that as you, you know, expand your civic practice, expand the community engaged direction of your work, that this really broadens the reach and impact of your own practice, as well as bringing your expertise, your perspective to bear in the fields, in certain fields that you may not have thought about before, but that really could benefit from your approach, from your skill set, from your artistic practice, really bringing that into the fields of, expanding that into the fields of planning, community and economic development, and transportation. So we think that you obviously have a lot to offer, and we hope that this provides a vehicle for that expansion of your practice into our work, which really touches the lives, the daily lives of everyday people throughout the region. And then for planners and architects and designers, you know, we really think this program is going to is beneficial for you all in that it enhances your professional skills and experience, especially if you're already working with, you know, local government, especially if you're already working with us at the ARC. We'd really like to, you know, work with you further in ways that I think can really benefit our work together, and also provides you an inside look at the direction in which ARC is moving as we think about planning and engagement. And then so for people working in local government, you know, you all really are, you know, from our member jurisdictions, you really are our closest partners in reaching your community members, and helps us, you know, really expand our reach throughout the region, but really you're our closest partners. And so again, we'd like for you to be thinking, as well as, you know, the planners that we work with, in how to connect with your community in deeper ways, connect with the diverse parts of your communities, and really think about more effective community engagement, civic engagement, as well as bringing working creatively with artists and culture bearers as partners in this effort. So next slide. And I hope that I think you'll hear more from our alumni who are with us today in our conversation about that as well. So these are the 3 project teams. These are the 3 community-based organizations that we worked with in 2022. And these are just the project teams. Again, a collection of, for each project team, a group of planners, artists, and some other folks working in local government, really thinking about these ideas that they were hoping that we could help them out with, and I'll talk about them in the next slide, in the upcoming few slides, is that Aleph Institute, which is Arabic Cultural Center in Northeast Atlanta. They're located along the proposed path of the Peachtree Creek Greenway. So they're really thinking about how to incorporate the programming that they offer within their property. They were thinking about how to incorporate that and create connectivity to the proposed greenway, and using their property, developing ideas for gathering spaces, art installations, temporary and permanent art activations that really reflect and express, the Arab cultures that are so central to their work. So this is a project, I think Rosemary, as well as EL, but I'm not sure, we're on this project, and so maybe they can talk about that a little bit in our conversation. And next slide. Balesnik Dance Company is a dance company with the mission of really serving Black and Brown dancers who have been overlooked despite their professional training. They're located in East Point, and they were looking for connections to downtown East Point, to MARTA, as well as to another proposed greenway coming through their community. And so, the team really thought about how to incorporate their work, Balesnik's work, and activities and programming into fostering those connections. Next slide. And then the final project team was tasked with thinking about how to incorporate and share the stories that Wheel of Beaufort Highway has been gathering from their community members, from their immigrant and refugee community members, how those stories could be shared at different important locations throughout the corridor. Next slide. Which brings us to our conversation today with our 2022 program alumni. I'm so happy to be able to be in this conversation with E.L. Chisholm, who is an artist, muralist, and designer. Rita Kompelmacher, who's the Director of Community Partnerships and Engagement at the Alliance Theater, and Rosemary Watts, who's a Business and Cultural Development Manager at the City of Dunwoody. So we're delighted to have them with us today. I was hoping that each of them could introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves, about their background, and what they do. So, E.L., could you start us off?
I can. Hi, everybody. I'm E.L. Chisholm. I'm a fine artist, muralist, designer, art activist, and creative placemaking specialist consultant. So in my work, I paint murals and creative placemaking using tactical urbanism projects to decrease blight and increase public engagement. So yeah, I was in the last ALMA cohort, and it really enlightened me more on community engagement and what my role is as an artist in community development. So yeah, I'm Erica. Hi.
Hi. Rita, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Rita Kompelmacher. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And my day job is at the Alliance Theater, where I'm the Director of Community Partnerships and Engagement. However, I came to this work, I was not an insider and by any means, and have not been working in community partnerships and engagement for many years. In fact, most of my career was academic. And I spent 7 years teaching theater history, teaching, like really working with students to understand how theater or the arts participate and shape broader political, social, and cultural issues that we might be dealing with in contemporary society. So I had a sense of how to theoretically understand the arts and community design. But in this work with the Alliance, which I've started maybe 3 years ago, I think I've been practicing taking that theoretical knowledge and applying it into sort of day-to-day work at a pretty large institution. The Alliance is the largest regional theater in the Southeast. Figuring out how equity, diversity, and impact, these kind of buzzwords in the field, how they really are manifested in practice and with communities in mind. Yeah, that's a little bit about what I spent a lot of my time thinking and doing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Rosemary, you want to close us out with introductions?
Yes. So Rosemary Watts, and as she said, I work for the city of Dunwoody. When I was hired on, they had not had a cultural department or cultural development. We were a pretty young city, about 10 years old at the time when I started. So most of our focus was on just getting infrastructure and getting our city up to speed. And they hadn't really thought about art and culture and how it played into developing the city. So I got on in this role of business and cultural development. And we started a public art implementation plan. We had a consultant come in and tell us all the things we needed to do. So since then, I've been working half of my time is in cultural development, and we've put out a lot of public art since then. And we've done a couple of cultural arts events outside of what Parks and Recs does, because we realized that we needed these things to further along our economic development, to make the place a really inviting location for businesses, employees, and just people to come and visit, and helping out our hotels. So we saw what a huge need we had for these type of things that, you know, we hadn't thought about before. So me, with my experience in coming to this program, part of it was I just wanted to learn what other cities were doing and get to know how artists played a role in this, and how designers, and I mean, our team was made up of educators and people that knew how to do murals, people that knew how to work with CAD, and it was so much learning from them and understanding how we could sort of incorporate all these different people into our programs and get them in from the beginning, instead of kind of using them as an afterthought. Oh yeah, we need to think about this now that we've put all these things in place. So now we're kind of getting in front of it and just having gotten built these relationships through this program. It's been great because I've been able to use these people as sounding boards, and so it was really a wonderful experience, and not something I expected to get out of the program.
Well, great. So you've already, started answering my next question, which is, what about this program interested you? How did you see this program aligning with your own personal as well as professional background and goals? And Rosemary, I don't know if you want to keep going or we'll come back to you again.
Sure. I mean, I'll keep going with that, because what I did find from just this in-person meeting, as opposed to, what we had been doing for so long with these Zooms, are that there are certain things that people reacted to through the presentations and through the interactions that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise. So certain things that touched or moved, like Erica, from an artist perspective, that I could tell that she was really taking in, were different from things that I learned, that I found interesting in some of the presentations that people made, that were like, this is what we did here in Midtown, that I could actually take back and implement, and that I would take notes about. So that's one thing that I found really interesting, that and often working with the groups, all the different perspectives that came in helped me to understand that, like, when I do a project now, I need to bring in all these different groups because they provide so much insight that I could not have otherwise gotten just from working with the people in the city, our government officials and our city council. Like they're great, but we need more of that, all those different perspectives. So that's something that I've taken, not just for my work, but personally, that I think about, every day when I try to do things or do projects. And it's helped because I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. So thinking about them and bringing them in, and what kind of perspectives they can bring in is really helpful.
I can add a little to that. I share a lot of what Rosemary is talking about, and I especially like what you're saying about different perspectives. I know what drew me to apply and to be involved in this program was the desire to have a space to explore and create and test ways of doing community work in a way that wasn't attached to my job. And there's nothing wrong with my job, by the way. I have to put that on record. There's people I know here. It's you have to, when you're working, your job, you're working within certain parameters. And sometimes you become a bit closed-minded in the sense because of working in certain parameters to other ideas. And so I saw this as an opportunity to think otherwise, to challenge myself, to explore really what the arts can bring to community life and community development and ways of envisioning and kind of activating a better civic society. So I saw it as a personal way to push myself forward, and then was hoping that those insights will then transfer back into the work that I do my day to day.
And then I'll follow up. So for me, Alma came to me because I wanted to broaden the knowledge that I had in creative placemaking. I have a degree in sociology with a concentration in urban development, and I minored in art at Georgia State. I've been out of college for a while now. I'm an artist, which is that's what I do now. So years ago, I quit my job in the beauty industry, and I transplanted myself into this nonprofit in Birmingham, Alabama, economic development nonprofit. They told me they were in phase 1. They wouldn't need me, an artist, until phase 3 of their development. And I told them, no, y'all need me now. So I quit my job and I left to work with them. And I've been working with them for about 3 years now. And I've added about 15 to 20 murals in the Birmingham Civil Rights District. Not just murals that I've painted, but other murals that local artists have painted. And a part of my job that I took personally was creating an art community to help increase public engagement and decrease blight using public art projects and tactical urbanism projects. And tactical urbanism projects are temporary projects that are inexpensive. So that's what I've been working on. Alma helped me to realize, to make the connection between what my actual job is in community engagement. And it helped me to listen, working with Rosemary and in the group, it helped us to structure things that as an artist, I normally don't necessarily do. It helped me realize my role in development as far as being an artist and an urbanist. I feel like in my group I fit in perfectly because I was able to help create visuals for what our project was, which is still different from what I've been doing. And what I feel like I needed the most in this project was in understanding how important the community is in this work, and how important it is to know how to communicate with the community, all the different types of people in a community, and how because a lot of times with developers, they don't necessarily have that part of their brain turned on. Like what do people care about? Like what makes them feel good? What makes a community a community? So I think that as an artist, like we're able to bring that to the table, the empathy in the community. So yeah.
I really love I feel like the interaction, Rosemary, you mentioned this, and then Rita picked up on it in the different perspectives. And then Erica, you've also been emphasizing this, that, you artists shouldn't just be brought in at phase 3, right? They should been in at phase 1. But I love hearing from you all about how you learned from each other, right? Rosemary, you talked about how now you're more aware, like, from the speakers that came in, you were tuned into certain things, but through the group interaction, you were like, oh, well, the artists are really tuning into this part of it. I'm tuned into this part of it, but you were all really learning together, because my next question is really like, what was your role in each of these projects? But it seems like so much more expansive than like, having a clearly defined role, because you were all learning together as you went, which I think is exactly what we're trying to gain from, is that you all bring your own individual talents and expertise, and yet somehow the whole is bigger than the parts, right? So can you describe, a little bit more about your program experience, and then do talk about your own specific role and what you brought to it. But I just appreciated how you all are like, Erica, you were learning from Rosemary. I really appreciated in our pre-conversation about how, Rosemary, you were like, I don't know if, like people want to hear about my role because I'm not an artist. But then Erica, like in our conversation, really pointed out, but Rosemary, you brought, all these other things to the team that wouldn't have necessarily been there if it was just a group of artists,
Right. Well, I'll speak to what our project, I was on the Alif project, and we were tasked with figuring out what to do with this to attract people to their center, because it's in a place that you would never just stumble across. It's just in the back of this lot that you have to wind around to get to. And they were going to have a path, a public path coming through that bikers and walkers would. So they wanted to figure out how to, make it attractive, make it inviting. So I had ideas that I could bring and verbalize, and from city planning, like these are things that we would think about doing, but I had no way of putting it down visually. And as some of us were putting ideas out, there were other people that were artists that were just sketching the ideas, and then someone else was, able to go on their computer and actually put that on, on some application they had. So I mean, everyone was able to just bring something different that we would not otherwise have thought of doing, and then just building on that to come up with this project. And I thought that was a really neat thing that you don't see that happening so much in the city. I mean, it's very much like, here's a project. Like one of the projects that came up was, here's a project and it's, for a turn lane. Oh, and just happens that we're going to have this big wall. And no one's thought about like, oh, maybe you shouldn't spend money on just making this wall and putting granite up. Like maybe you should use that money to make it artwork. But that's sort of after the fact. So if we could do projects like this with all these people up front, instead of waiting till the end, it would not be such a rush and like not such a, oh, where are we going to get this money to do this? So I think that process kind of helped me like realize like, okay, this is really how projects should be done. They should start off with everyone giving their input with all these different ideas. So I mean, that's kind of what I took from doing these group projects and just learning from everyone else.
I want to chime in. after Rosemary and us being in the same group. So beautiful. Definitely learned a lot. And honestly, my alma class like changed the whole way that I do work. So for me, I was one of the people sitting at the table listening to what everyone was saying and drawing the picture like it's and there was a few of us sitting there doing it. And what I really want to speak to is about art being the baseline of design. Um Artists are important to be like at the bottom like of the structure, because if you think about just like what you learn as far as like color and shape and structure and all of these things, you get that in art. And so that was kind of my role in the group, was to help everyone visualize and see what we were communicating. The way that I understand art is that we're in the business of communication. Where Rosemary's mind, as we're walking through the woods and seeing all of these things, and we're like, what are we gonna do? They want us to do what? And Rosemary, and not speaking for Rosemary, but Rosemary probably couldn't visualize the space being cleared and all of these things like popping up, that we had all of these different ideas of ways that we could activate the space for the walkable community. So yeah, that was my role, to help us like see what could happen, what could be. Listening to a lot of the speakers that we had, it definitely challenged me as an artist to go deeper in community design, because there's so many different ways to reach people. Like there was an artist that we watched that did like a labyrinth, and that really spoke to me how artists are able to come into communities and create poignant work that will not only engage the community but enlighten them. And I think that's super important. So that was my role. But
I can add a little bit to this. As we were taught, as I was hearing both Rosemary and Erica speak, I was thinking about my students, and I used to teach a lot, and how much the strong leaders in a class often hated group work. Like they would roll their eyes, and usually it's because they would feel the burden of having to do all the work themselves. And what I think everyone is hearing is just how joyous and significant this experience was, because group work was not that, right? It was what you were saying, Marian, the whole was greater than the sum of the parts. It was really truly like a model of how people can work and collaborate together to achieve something super like beyond what they as individuals are able to accomplish. And I know we felt that as the group, and I was in a group that worked, whose community partner was We Love Buford Highway. And that's an organization, a smaller nonprofit located, actually it doesn't really have a building. Well, they have an office, but really it's a decentralized organization, and their archive of stories from the immigrant communities along Buford Highway exists digitally. And my group was tasked with this objective of figuring out how to bring these stories to life in a compelling way in the community. So I found myself, I will say, like in my role, I'm usually the talky one. I will speak a lot in groups. And I kept kind of maybe like a compass going for the group around really the mission of the organization and how we were seeing that translate into a vision for the project. So we ended up creating this project that was called the Newspaper Stand Project, but it was decentralized. There were different newspaper stands in different parts along Buford Highway rather than like one location or building or one site, which was really true to the way that, well, Buford Highway is, and also the way that this We Love Buford Highway organization worked. But similar to what Rosemary and Erica were saying, like it was incredibly, like there were aha moments where we were kind of getting at an idea, and then the quiet artist in the group, like a version of Erica, but I had two incredible artistic colleagues with me in that group, would be sketching this newspaper stand, and it would appear before we understood it that there was this thing, the newspaper stand, that exist in the world. And then we would all look at it, and it did drive us to then think deeper and in a more I guess we were able to expand on that project in ways that I think we couldn't have as a group if we didn't see something together and understand it in space and time. So that was incredible, along with moments where we had a few city, I want to say city planners or city workers that worked in the cultural space with us. And I remember another aha moment where the whole group was like, "Oh my goodness," where she brought up, we had this newspaper idea, and she brought up the idea of having the local businesses take out ads inside this newspaper, and this would, support the local economy. It would provide promotional space for the local businesses, but it would be a way that this organization could also support themselves and sustain generating new newspapers over time and so forth. So it's a sustainable model that she was envisioning, that I think we really no one brought to the table at that point until it was something that she kind of understood and could think through the stakes of revenue and sustainability from a city perspective. So it was really a delight to work like this. And I think I told this group many times that it was really modeling exactly the kind of community design work that I all aspired to do. And I don't want to romanticize it too much, but it really was a magical experience to work with that team.
I think they probably say the same about you. So, I want to go back and draw out some of what you had said earlier, as well as like what you had just described in terms of community design. And, how has this program really, and I think in your role too, right? Your role is so community oriented at the Alliance Theater. How has your experience in this program influenced the community-oriented nature of your own work? And then I'd like each of you, because I know Erica, you mentioned that as well. So Rita, why don't you start with that? And if you've been able to, experiment outside the parameters of your own job and bring that into then your job.
Slowly and surely, but yes, I think a bit. I think one thing that this helped me do that I haven't touched on is I'm relatively new to the city of Atlanta. So it did help me understand what the landscape and ecosystem for this kind of work is beyond the partners that I kind of have met through my organization. So in that sense, yeah, there's just even the ARC and the arts projects that happen and occur within the transportation ecosystem, and learning about ways that there's interest in bringing arts into the buses and the trains here in the city of Atlanta. And so that did start my the gears rolling. I have a couple of ideas now. I don't think that I'm pursuing that's about mobility and arts and how we can use our transportation system.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to bring you back.
Great effects, especially for families and youth, which is something where the Alliance has a stronghold, and we could really, I think I could really see a strong partnership there. So that's one example of how I think it brought just new ideas for me in terms of civic design and infrastructure, and how the Alliance can probably support. Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go next? Erica.
I'll go, but honestly, I'm trying to reverb the question in my head. So can you ask it again?
Yeah. I mean, and I know that, this is already a central part of your work, but really how has, participating in this program influenced the community-oriented nature of your artistic practice?
Wonderful. Yes. Great question. Thank you. Thank you for reiterating that. It's so after Alma, I've done multiple projects since we left our class. I was able to, Alma helped me realize what RFPs were and RFQs, and I didn't really know what those were necessarily. I knew that before Alma, I was an applier. After Alma, I was a different type of an applier. So I released my own RFPs and my own RFQs to hire muralists and artists, and that really heighten the work that I've been doing. Also, like being able to communicate. I've done a project with economic development nonprofit and AARP. And in that project, I had to first have a discussion with the community, invite in the older community as well as them and their grandchildren. Speak to them about the work that I do in creative placemaking, what it is and why it's important, and what AARP wanted out of the project that we're doing. But one of the main questions that I had to ask them was, "What would you like to see?" So Alma helped me to ask those questions and to know what questions to ask a community, to properly engage a community, to properly show a community how much developers and artists, and when you meet that, like that intersection, like how much care is in that space that sits in the middle. I said something when we were in class that I hear often, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So Alma was able to help me connect those dots and communicate, because I had been moving around in the space and honestly just working by myself, feeling like I had to do it all because the people that I have been working with were not necessarily on board and understanding and forward looking as I am. So I felt like I was in it by myself. But when I was able to go to the Alma class, start new conversations and different discussions, and Alma just helped me to reach further and to go higher, literally with the work that I've been doing. So yeah, I
That's
answered
fantastic.
the question.
Love that.
Thank you.
Rosemary, do you have any thoughts on how this
Yeah.
program can enhance, the community,
Well,
engagement? Yeah.
I'll give
Oh,
you
and I just
one.
wanted to make one clarification, is that I know we've been, Alma has been mentioned a couple of times. So again, Alma's been the incubator for this new program, culture and community design, but it's just part of the legacy. So
Yeah, so we keep
Yeah.
referring to that. So I will give you one example of what came out. Like, this is an actual thing that happened. I was sitting in one of the presentations, and the Midtown Alliance came to speak about their projects, and they talked about their storefront art. And I just thought, well, this is brilliant. I'm going to bring this to the city of Dunwoody. Well, we don't have a lot of money for arts and culture. We have like so little money. So my manager said I could have $3,000 to do this project. So I actually took this idea, let me do it. I went to our businesses, local businesses, and I said, hey, we're going to do this project. Would you like to display the art in your windows? So they were enthusiastic, and they're, so happy to participate in the program. Now, we knew we couldn't hire expensive artists to do it. So I said, well, we'll just go to the high school. So I worked with the art department of 3 high school art teachers, and the principal was all on board to send out sort of like an RFP for these students to get experience how to do this and get excited about it, submit their RFPs. And we had like 30 something submissions and selected 10 artists and gave them $300 each. And that's huge for a student. So then we took their art and put them, we had a big deal about it, and we put them in the windows. So that was participation from our businesses and our schools. And then after that program was done, we took those same artworks and put them in a nonprofit Dunwoody Nature Center and displayed them there for their butterflies and broods. Like they had a butterfly event, so people were able to see them there. So that's kind of one way that I kind of learned from this program. Like there's a lot of different ways you can implement these different programs and get everyone involved and get everyone excited about it. So I just think that just sitting in these classes, you just kind of absorb things, and things pop into your ideas come up that you wouldn't get just doing your day-to-day job.
And you turned that around so quickly. Like, I feel like
it was very fast.
Yeah, working in government agency or having worked with cities before, it's like, oh my gosh, Rosemary did that like in a matter of months. That was like brilliant.
I think she presented in March, and I think we had them displayed at the end of May. I think that's how quickly that went through. But yeah, it's just like there's so many ways to do all these different projects, and so many people you can get involved in thinking about how to do it.
Yeah. And so I'll follow that up with, your story that you just shared. And you had shared another interesting tidbit that was fascinating to me, which was that, like, I want to ask you all to talk about, who should apply to this program. Because Rosemary, you mentioned a great point, during our previous conversation. I don't know if you remember it, but, who should be applying to this program? Like, who would you ask to apply to this program, like, especially from your colleagues?
Oh, gosh, I would, someone that I would never have thought should have in the past,
Mhm.
are like the directors of public works or community development, because what would they need to do with art? They just fix the roads, and they just like work with developers. But those people, it really is so important for those people to understand like how art can play a part in the beginning. If you're talking to a developer, community development has to approve these permits, these plans, but maybe now we're trying to get a percentage of their development, in a percentage that they will put towards art, like a 0.01% towards art.
Mhm.
Well, the community development person would be the one that initiates that conversation, and why, that person also needs to understand like what the importance of it. So people like that, and then anyone else. I mean, I know there's someone here that I know from a CVB, and they should be involved in this because they're trying to attract tourists to their cities. So it's a lot of people that I would never have thought of. I would have just thought, okay, artists are going to do this, the people that are in arts and culture,
Yeah.
and that's it. But really, it's so broad.
Yeah, I really love that point, because like a lot of times for these kinds of programs, we do get like the arts and culture manager or the arts and culture director, like attending these programs, but it's like the choir preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But since you've been in this program, you're like, oh my gosh, public works, the director of public works should attend this program. Also because I think it makes the synergy in the city like that much greater when everyone is understanding how artists can be a part of the process, how arts and culture can be part of like what Rita was talking about, like mobility and transportation. And then, this new RFP that you just issued, Rosemary, about that wall, which is a transportation infrastructure project. How can we get art involved at the beginning of that project rather than like at the end? So, phase 1 versus phase 3 again. So I really love that. So Rita, what about you? Who would you ask to apply to this program?
Totally love what Rosemary said. So second, she said, I think she knows a lot more in terms of who the stakeholders and decision makers are than I do within the civic space. So really appreciated hearing that. But then, an interesting one that came up for me that I wouldn't have initially expected would be funders, like people that are part of foundations that support work like that, that essentially support artistic and community projects. I think for them to see a great example of what this could be, to really understand deeply what community arts work is beyond a mural and a sculpture somewhere in a park or on the side of a building, that could be a game changer for how we think about funding the arts in the city of Atlanta and probably beyond. So that was one thought I had.
I wrote a list and I'm here for the funders. Like, that's definitely on my list. We did a lot of questioning in our group, like, how much does this cost? And we're like, are we supposed to be worried about how much it costs? So I have a list of different types of people I think should apply. Like for some reason, I think a construction worker, somebody that works with materials would have been great in a group when you're talking about community culture and design, because we don't know a lot about materials. We did a lot of questioning about materials, and if we had someone on our team that knew about it, that would have been great. And then I was just at a panel discussion where Invest Atlanta was there, and it just made me think of this program and say that investors would be really great to help us answer the questions of like, how much does this cost, and numbers, or to help reel in how communities can get more funding for their projects. Architects would be wonderful to apply, artists of all kinds, photographers, visual artists, storytellers, teachers, community leaders, economic developers, business owners, and landscapers.
So basically,
my-
everyone should apply.
Everybody. Yes, because we're all community and we all need each other. We're all here for each other, and our minds don't work alone. So any and everybody that can answer the questions that need to be answered.
I love that. Well, so I think we'll just wrap it up here. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience that we have. But is there anything that we haven't discussed that you really want to mention before we leave or before we head to questions?
I want to say something. Is my mic still on? Okay, yes, it is. Don't be afraid to apply. It's so necessary. And I believe that Atlanta Regional Commission, they make it so inviting. Like, so if you have any tension or stress about applying, just apply and you'll learn so much. You'll learn so much. So that's all I wanted to say.
Any last thoughts? Any questions from the audience? If you want to raise your hand, you can do. Well, I think that's it. So thank you so much for being part of the program. Really grateful for your being here today as well and sharing your thoughts with our potential applicants. Oh, what makes for a successful application? Do you all have any thoughts on that? We will be discussing that after this, but if you have any thoughts on that, what do you all think? Since you obviously submitted a successful application.
No, I can add, I don't think I know. I would actually love to. I'm a bit baffled actually, because I applied and did not get in, I think the first time. So, oh, we have a fire drill happening here. So I might need to jump in just a moment. But I will say that one thing I was going to say is along the lines of what Erica was mentioning is certainly also don't be discouraged if this first time you might not get in, or there's probably some special logic to creating a group here, and I don't know all of the details about that, but don't be discouraged. I applied again, don't think I said anything too different in my application, aside from maybe made it a bit more personal, just really connected to why I really wanted to do this, rather than any answers I thought they wanted to hear in my application. So that's maybe my tip. Really keep it personal and about yourself and your development and your just authentic version of why you want to do this. And also don't be discouraged if you don't get in the first time. With that, I have to run. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Marian. And
stay safe. Stay safe. See you later.
I was gonna follow up on her on Rita saying that, to be honest, like I reviewed the application again today, just like before this call, just to like review for me so I can put myself in the shoes of the new applicants. Be honest, just be honest about the work that you're doing, the work that you have done, and the work that you would like to do. Be honest and don't be discouraged if you don't get chosen. I know there's a strategy to making the groups, but there's a place for all of us. And ARC has been around for a long time and they're dedicated to doing this work, community and culture design. So, and there's a place for you in this community. So be honest, it will set you free.
I love that. Well, thank you both so much. And, you know, we'll be in touch. We'll keep talking. So thank you. And with that, I'll hand it back to Josh for the next portion of this presentation today.
Great. Thank you, Marion. And thank you, Rosemary, Erica, and Rita. And Rosemary, I still got you spotlighted here. And there we go. All right. So we are going to move on and talk about what the program is going to be like. There are a few questions that came in on the chat, and I'll cover those when we get to actually like turning in an application, because I think we have a space to cover those at that point. So we will come back to those. All right. So we'll cover what we're going to do, what the program is going to look like in this next year in 2023. All right. So the way that we think about the content for the program, I've split it up into three areas. One is that we are definitely want to make sure that there is new information, ideas, and concepts from leaders that are both local to Metro Atlanta, but also from around the country. So we're thinking about the people that are doing this work and have something to contribute to what our conversation in the class is, how we are approaching the projects that we'll be talking about as well. So that has included people like Roberto Bedoya, who's the Cultural Affairs Manager, the City of Oakland, who came and spoke to us about his long work in this field and leading arts organizations and funders and working in city government and outside of city government. So he came and spoke to us by Zoom. Fantastic conversation with him, and the class was able to not only hear him speak, but engage in discussion with him. Erica mentioned Wallace Johnson. She referred to her work. She's the one who did the Labyrinth work, which was explicitly addressing the history of redlining in New York. She came and spoke to us by Zoom as well. So we also had local leaders who came and spoke to us in person. So that's where we're programming speakers to come and be in discussion with the class. Group discussions are a huge part of our work. There's both activities that we put together. We will work on concepts around planning and arts. We looked at the spectrum of community engagement. So what are the different ways that we can do community engagement? How do we dig into and use creative processes to move community engagement towards engagement that's designed and led by community? So starting one side, we just involve the community, and how do we move that to where we are co-designing with the community and talking about what that looks like at different stages. But I think also one of the most fruitful things that we do in the class is have an active exchange between class members from different disciplines, different personal and professional perspectives, which you've just heard from our alumni from last year. And then a major part of what we do in the class is project-based. So we are working on a project that you're on a team, you have deliverables. This is a project that we have worked with our organizations in the community. So last year that was Aleph, We Love Buford Highway, and Balethnic Dance Company. We worked very closely with them before we started to develop what their goals were for the project. We made sure that they fit into what the class could accomplish within the time frame and within the sort of what we had the ability to do. And we put together deliverables. So you're working towards an actual thing that's going to be done and presented at the end of the class. There are going to be community engagement activities that you will be doing in the community, working with community leaders, with the organization and people in the community they serve. And we have a budget for that too. So there will be actual ability to do something in the community. And then all of this is to the goal of the organization they're working with being able to implement the plan that you're putting together for them. And we will continue to work after September. The ARC will continue to work with those organizations, possibly through other programs that we have, to see that project come to fruition. So that's a major, and that's really the driving piece of this class, is around working on this project. But we wrap it in learning that's going to contribute to that project. You are learning from your colleagues or activities that we've put together as well in group discussions to really make that project come together. So what does this look like? So how is the class structured? We will get together for the first time in February for a welcome breakfast, where you'll get to understand a little bit more about the program, meet everybody. And that is a short breakfast time that we will do at our offices in Peachtree Center. The meat of the program is our 6 program days, which start on March 7th and culminate in September 12th, which is final presentations. We'll be meeting either in our office at Peachtree Center in downtown Atlanta. We will do 2 that'll be virtual, so you can do them from wherever you are. And then we'll do 2 that are off-site, and those are to be announced, but we'll do them in an organization, in a community. Last year, we were at the Arts Exchange in East Point, and we are excited to be able to get out there and see the community as part of the class as well. You will also be doing a site visit. In April, there'll be a time where your group meets with your organization, either at their location, they have a central location that they work out of, or perhaps at locations in their community that they choose. So for instance, last year at the Aleph Institute, we were at their location, we were walking around their property, their project was based on their property there. We Love Beaufort Highway, as we said, don't have one central place that they meet. So we met several places along the Beaufort Highway corridor. And then finally, I mentioned that you'd be doing a community engagement activity as part of this. You'll be designing that and working with the organization to execute that, and that will happen in June. We've 2 weeks. Pick one or both of them to do that work in there. So those are the scheduled times. We ask that our participants, individuals that are participating in this, attend all of the sessions. Make sure that they are held on your calendar from the beginning. It's really important because you're working with a team who will need your expertise at all these times. And then in addition to that, we expect that out of class time will be about 5 hours per month throughout the program. Times you're meeting with your team, perhaps you're doing some research on something for the team, or some piece of work there. But we are working to make sure that most of the time is spent is going to be in the class, but we know that there'll be some time outside of class that you're working on that. Okay, so the cost for the program is $1,000 for each individual participant. However, if you are an artist or work in a arts and culture nonprofit, we will take that cost down to 0. You may be eligible to participate at 0. And then we will be selecting 5 artists or cultural bearers that have a civic, social, or community practice that we will pay them $1,500 for their skill set and expertise. So they would not be paying the fee to be in the class, and they would be receiving $1,500. All right, and I'm going to just add on here quickly. We're going to come back to this too, but there was a question about what are the community organizations that we're working with. We have a parallel process to choose the community-based organizations. So right now we are also accepting proposals from community-based organizations. And we're going to come back and talk a little bit about that because we would love your help in getting the word out to maybe a community-based organization that you work with too. But just to answer that question, we don't know who they are yet. We'll be choosing them about the same time. I'm going to turn it over now to Molly Bogle, our colleague Molly Bogle, who is going to talk a little bit about what the organizations would expect to do after this program, how we could work with them going forward, to give you the context of what the organizations will be experiencing.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. As Josh mentioned at the beginning, my name is Molly Bogle. I am with the Atlanta Regional Commission's Community Development Assistance Program, among other programs. And that's really where the intersection is here. So to give you a little bit of background, which overlaps with the introduction that Marion gave you, CDAP, or the Community Development Assistance Program, was established in 2018 as a way to sort of streamline requests we were getting from local governments, CIDs, and nonprofits for planning and technical assistance. So we created the program in 2018, worked under that, the goal of implementing the region's plan for about 2 years, and then the pandemic hit. And we shifted gears and we really started to focus our efforts on those projects that promote social equity and community resiliency. We also had a desire, even at that time, to start collaborating with CBOs, but didn't really know how or where to kind of fit that in. At the same time, Marion and her team were doing fantastic work with Alma, and we're already working with those CBOs. And so after a couple of years of sort of thinking through how this might come together, Marion had the fantastic idea of creating this culture and community design program. And so we're so excited to be partnering with that program. What that means is that CDAP will be providing staff support. So ARC staff will be sitting in on each of the cohorts. We'll be providing that planning and technical assistance throughout the process, but primarily for us to find ways in which these projects will be funneled to other funding mechanisms within ARC, primarily the Livable Centers Initiative and that Transportation Improvement Program. Both of those programs have additional planning and implementation funds. And the idea is that we love planning. We're a planning organization. We think good plans are great, but we want to see them implemented, right? There's no point in a plan if it doesn't get implemented. And so we are there to help see that come to life. And we're just really excited about that. Marion, was there anything else you wanted me to cover? I think that's, oh, I did want to mention a little bit, since you would be the sort of working cohort, what that means in terms of what we would be doing in the group is we're going to be taking a look at existing livable centers initiatives within the sort of study geographic area that the project we are working on might fall. We're going to be looking at whether there are already some transportation improvement program projects going on. We're going to be looking at our regional transportation plan to see where all of these things align, and find out, where if we can craft these projects in a way that they will easily be funneled through those funding mechanisms. And I saw a few things come up on the chat, and I just want to make sure. Let's see. Okay, so none for me specifically. I know we can answer those, but yeah, if you have any questions about what we'll be doing, what our role within the cohort will be, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. But again, it's really just getting down to getting those plans off the shelf and making them into reality.
Thank you, Molly. And that's a great point, that there will be, in addition to ARC staff running the whole program, there will be an ARC planner on each team, each of the 2 teams. And there was a question in the chat, which Marion answered, but I'll just repeat that we will have 2 organizations that we're working on and 2 project teams. You will be, if you're selected for the class, you'll be on 1 project team and working specifically with 1 organization. However, you will be exposed to what the other teams doing. We ask the teams to give each other feedback, so you will have a chance to interact both with those other class members, but also with their projects. You'll hear what they're doing. So yeah, that's great. And then you'll have a chance to work directly on a team with an ARC planner as well. We're going to go into actually the specifics of applying, and I'll make sure to answer some of the other questions that you've asked as well. So first of all, if you have questions, we'll have time again at the end of this session, but we're available if you have questions about applying, and you're welcome to ask us, before the deadline. If you have a question about whether, what you're doing is appropriate or the right thing to do with this class, and we are very helpful, very eager to be able to answer those questions so that you can turn in a strong application. The deadline for individuals applying for this program is on November 18th. we will be reviewing from mid-November through mid-December, reading all those applications, a team of staff members, and we will notify applicants in late December. It's an online application. You go to atlantaregional.org/CCD for culture and community design. You'll go straight there, and you can read all the information we talked about at the top about the goals for the program, what were the purpose and the objectives that we have, what we're looking for are written down on that page. And you can also find the submit application button where you'll fill out an online application. And I'm going to go through that online application in some detail so you can ask questions about specific questions, what we're looking for, and it gives us a chance to talk about that. Okay, let's move on. All right, so we're going to be asking, one of the first questions we're going to ask is we're going to ask you to identify sort of what best describes you professionally or in your community work. And we want to ask if whether you are applying as a working artist or culture bearer with a civic, social, or community practice, whether you are coming from the architecture, planning, design professional field with the community-based practice, or whether you're coming from local government, working in local government, interested in civic design, community engagement, or if you're a community member who's, work at a nonprofit, or you work in community in some way, or you are a community member who does community-based work, whether it's professional or volunteer. Those are the four categories, and you're going to have to choose one of those categories. And to talk to you a little bit about why you might choose a working artist or cultural bearer one, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we think about when we talk about what it means to be a working artist or cultural bearer. There is not one definition of this, but rather these are some sort of principles that we think are applicable or characteristics of artists working in this space. So these in a community practice or civic practice, we think that community members become co-creators with the artists, and that the art reflects the values and vision of the community, that the artist, as part of their practice, works to achieve that end, to work with community members in that way. Creative processes are used to address community needs, to create equitable and living communities. We believe that just the nature of the creative process, especially one done intentionally with community, is one that can bring about a more equitable and more livable communities. And that the practice of this artist, an artist working in this way, is art form. When they practice their art form, it creates a space for and centers the stories of that community. It's about working with a community to tell their stories and to work with them so that they can tell their stories too. And then it centers the leadership of traditionally marginalized and excluded communities. One of the things that we'll talk about when we're going to talk to you a little bit about what we're looking for community organizations, like I mentioned. One of the things that we're looking for is organizations that are working in communities that we, as planners, that the Metro Atlanta overall has traditionally marginalized or excluded in planning work. So those are the communities that are a priority for us to serve. And then lastly, we think that creativity and the artists working with a civic, social, community practice foster creative and adaptable approaches to community issues, that they come up with ideas that a traditional planning process would not come up with. I think that's an important piece of it there. So that is some of our thinking around if you're applying as an artist or culture bearer with a civic, social, or community practice. This is what we're thinking about. It's not an exclusive list of characteristics. We'd love to hear from you if you think, hey, I do something that's kind of like that, but I also do this. And you have questions about that, ask us about that. Once you've chosen that, how you're applying under that, you're gonna be asked some further questions. It's a dynamic application. So if you are an artist, you choose that you're an artist, you're gonna be asked, have a couple different questions than the rest of our applicants. So the first question, as an artist, we're gonna ask you to describe your practice. We would love to hear some examples that demonstrate how you do your practice, your artistic practice. And so that you have a space to tell us about that. If you apply as something other than an artist, your question is going to be a little bit different. It's going to ask how your work has supported artists or cultural bearers as collaborators, co-designers. And if you've not had that experience previously, we'd like you to indicate why you're interested in expanding your work to include this approach. So we want you to think about how you would like to learn about working with artists, or how you have previously worked with artists. Next, we will ask you about your experience. And these are questions for everyone. So they're not, whether you apply as an artist or otherwise, you will be asked these questions. So how your personal or professional efforts, whether this is part of your job or volunteer-based, has influenced positive community change in the Atlanta region. And we want to know how they have centered the needs of and have shifted power to communities. Again, communities that have been historically or systemically excluded. So what have you done, and what have the results of it been? We want you to reflect on what the program's about. This is what Marion was saying at the beginning. We have some goals for the program. You've learned about what are the contents going to be and how it's going to be done. Why are you interested in that? And what do you hope to gain? Actually, some of the questions that we asked of our alumni. What did you gain? What was your experience here? We would love to know what you think it's going to be. You don't have to have all the answers, but we want to know what your thinking is coming in. And then we'll give you a space where you can just, if you have something that doesn't fit into one of the other questions, you have a little bit of space to do that. If you apply as an artist, we have one more section, and this is an optional section. We would love to, if you have it already, if you have some portfolio pieces or some links that you can share with us, we would love to see them if they're applicable. If you do not have them ready already, you do not have to apply these. It won't hurt your application. It can just help. We give you the opportunity to upload 3 images of your work in one file. They have to be kind of small, because if we get a lot of them, we can only take up to 3 megabytes for all the files together, but you can upload 3 images. You can also provide 3 links, either to videos or a website of your work there. Again, this is optional, and it's just for people applying as artists. All right. So what are we looking for overall? When we're reading the applications, we're going to be thinking about some things, a selection criteria. So for the working artists, cultural bearers, we're going to be looking for your experience, expertise, excellent, how you've impacted communities in your artistic practice. We just want to see what you've done, what the impact has been on there. We're looking for a clear commitment to equity. That's important. That's important whether you're applying as an artist or not. And we want to understand how you're committed to your understanding of what the program is. So be clear about what your understanding of the program and how you will be part of it. Now it will contribute to your work. If you are applying not as an artist, but as an architect, planner, designer, and local government, or as a community member, we want to understand your commitment to the integration of arts and culture in your primary occupation or the way you work, how you would support cultural workers, artists, cultural bearers. Clear commitment to equity, same. And we also want to understand your commitment to the program and understanding of how the program will impact and contribute to your work. So this is specific to your work. How does this program impact you and your work? Because we want you to come out being able to do this kind of work in your community, to work with other communities. And with that, I'm going to just pause for a second and see if there's any questions. I think Marion's been asking questions, answering questions in the chat. But just to reiterate a couple, that we're looking for about 25 people to be in this class. So we will be looking for people that meet all these selection criteria. And then we will be looking for a group of people, 2 groups of people that we can put on teams that are going to be well balanced. They're going to have representation from the different areas we're looking for, from architects, planners, designers, artists, people in local government. We want to have teams that are well represented. across all of those. We serve 11 counties, so geographic diversity is important to us as well. So we're looking for people that are from the city of Atlanta, but are also from counties, the all 11 counties that we're looking at. So that's an important thing to be that we'll be looking at as we put a class together. Yeah, and Marion also covered this as well. It's in the chat, but we'll be looking for what the community organizations need when we pick the people, we assign people to those projects as well. But if you're something you're really interested in and it's expressed through the application, that's something that we can certainly take into consideration. One other thing I'll mention that I hadn't, and this is really something that's for the organizations, but it'll impact you as well, is that we're asking each of the organizations we select to nominate someone from their organization, a staff person or possibly a really committed volunteer who will be on the team as well. So you will have that person who is playing a role as a team member, but also has that information about the organization so that it makes you can answer the questions as they come up as your team member there as well. So that'll be someone who's part of the class. With that, if you get more questions come in about the application or any other thing that we've talked about today, keep putting them in here. We have a few more things to talk about as we go forward. But also feel free to reach out to us and we'll have contact information at the end if you have more specific questions about the application. So Marion, you want to talk about the sharing with the organizations?
Yeah, so we know that you all probably have significant connections with organizations that you work with or on the board of or volunteer for. So we'd love for you to share the word with any community-based organizations that you know of who might be interested in submitting an application. I think Josh mentioned that each community-based organization that we work with, and we're selecting 2, but if there's 3 really great ones, we might be able to open it up to a 3rd, but we can't promise, but there is a small possibility for that. So, we're specifically seeking to include organizations that represent, that serve communities that have been traditionally marginalized or excluded from local planning processes. So, Asian American, Arab American, Black, Latino, Latinx, immigrants, LGBTQ plus, Native American, Pacific Islander, people with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness, and low-income residents, older adults, and young people. So if you know of any organizations that serve these communities that are led by members of these communities, we would love for you to help us share the word. Their application is due a week before individual applications are due. So just note that in mind. Again, the stipend for their participation, we know that underrepresented communities, it's very hard for them to be able to participate in programs like these. So we offer a stipend for the organizations of $3,000, as well as, again, up to $2,000 that reimbursable costs for their community engagement activities that you all would be working on with them. So that is, definitely our recognition that without a stipend, they would not be able to participate. So thank you. If you are able to share this with anybody, we would really appreciate that. And also, I just wanted to acknowledge as well that the payment that Josh discussed earlier for working artists is, again, a recognition that without that payment, we would have no participation from working artists. So, in previous iterations of this program, like I mentioned, the ALMA program, the predecessor to this, really, there was very low participation from working artists simply because was not feasible, financially speaking. So we have made a commitment, with the support of our leadership, to enable participation from people and organizations and community members that normally would not have been able to participate in this kind of programming. And you know, that's one way that these communities are excluded from planning. So that is something that we are, you know, really grateful to our leadership for making that participation possible. So back to you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And I just questioned in the chat and I responded with links. There are recordings of both. We've done 2 information sessions with organizations. So if you're thinking that you know someone and want to point them to that, I've sent the links. We'll also email this to you. But we did a session with Battle Ethnic, who's one of our organizations. They talked about their experience, and then we went through, similar to today, how to apply as an organization to submit a proposal. And then we did a second one with the Aleph Institute. So both of those links are there, and you're welcome to share those, look at them yourself about applying as an organization to have a team work with you as an organization. So if there aren't any other questions about sharing with an organization, really all that we have left is just general questions, but also contact information. You can write to Marian, and Marian, I'll let you close it out if no one else has any other questions.
Yeah, so thank you for being with us today. Really hope you'll apply. Again, if you have any further questions, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to discuss them with you. If you have any extensive questions, I'm happy to meet with you as well. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. And that's all I have.
Great.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.